why WTAW embodies the spirit of literary community. And that is because it's about people coming together for their love of reading and writing and supporting writers and supporting each other overall. The first time I encountered WTAW was when I was a uh, PR intern in the Bay Area when I was doing my MFA at St. Mary's College of California for the reading series that we used to have in person. And one of the things that immediately struck me at the time, being from like a smaller metro area in Reno, Nevada, was that there were these spaces where writers and folks who love literature could come together and be there for each other and just like vibe with the best vibes. It was so nice to like finally find a place like where like, oh yeah, there's lots of great like-minded people where we come together and celebrate writers and writing. And so today I live in Washington as a member of the tenure track faculty at Everett Community College, and I'm grateful to still be able to be part of WTAW, even virtually, um, as a member of the board of directors and being your MC tonight. Um, Before we begin, here are a few housekeeping tidbits and announcements. So please keep your sound muted throughout the readings. Uh, if you click the speech bubble icon, it will open the Zoom chat box. And so as each author begins to read, we'll post information about each author and links to their books there. So make sure to check out those links and save those links as they appear. So that way you can support our great readers and through checking out their whole books. And I also encourage people to use the chat feature. Because that way you can participate, leaving comments about specific lines you like or just passages and giving snaps and applause and praise and communicating with each other about these great readings. So definitely participate in the Zoom chat, and that's what it's there for. And that's one of the cool, fun things is that live feed of us all celebrating writing in real time while we hear these great passages from these wonderful authors. And so, otherwise, too, a noteworthy mention is just how well, how strong WTAW Press is going, and that's in no small part thanks to all of your support. So, along those lines, along with other small independent presses, the unexpected shuttering of SPD distribution came as a serious blow this year and really just underscored how crucial the support of our community is. So as we're heading into this crucial end of the year fundraising period, we're asking for your help. Because WTAW is a 501c3 nonprofit, all contributions are tax deductible, and any contribution that is meaningful to you is meaningful to us. So please support us however you can, and we're, as always, ever so grateful. And thank you again. There is still time to enter the Kevin McLavoy Book Prize for full-length prose manuscripts, as they're definitely welcoming submissions. So please keep an eye on that. Submissions will be open until December 31st, and our esteemed final judges are James Tate Hill, Yang Huang, and Olga Zilberborg. The winning entry will receive $2,500, publication, a contract, 25 books, and all entries will be considered for publication. For more information, sign up for our newsletter. So now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get to the reason why we're here, to hear some wonderful readings. So WTAW is excited to feature the following readers, and our first reader tonight is Vincent Chu, who is the author of the story collection Like a Champion. His fiction has appeared in Moo House, Still Magazine, Fjord's Review, Pithead Chapel, Pank Magazine, and elsewhere. He's a former Headland Center for the Arts affiliate artist, Hambidge Center Fellow, and Pushcart Prize nominee. He earned his first Bachelor of Arts from UCLA. Vincent lives in Oakland and recently finished his first novel. Please welcome Vincent Chu.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, Peg and Maggie. And I just want to say how glad I am to be here and grateful to be part of this lineup. So today I'm happy to read an excerpt from a longer story. And just for quick context, not too much you need to know, but it's about a young man who has quit his office job to travel the world for 1 year. And as things have not quite gone as planned at this moment, he thinks he's having a kind of spiritual epiphany with the help of a new friend, a part time monk named Mindy. Georgie knew he had met Mindy for a reason. He was thankful for the past year, and it was only possible because of her. And this was only the beginning. Mindy saw through the lies even more than he did, was a mentor who had seen farther around the bend, was someone whose experiences should be respected. Mindy lit a candle. The window to the attic stayed open, and visible dust freely entered their space, perhaps traveling across galaxies to say hello. George swallowed and lay with Mindy on the floorboards. They remained silent. He looked at the ceiling. After 1 hour, the sensation slowly presented itself to Georgie, and it was not dissimilar from when he had tried the mushrooms. He detected first the physical changes in the room, the beams of the attic flexing, the wood grain dissolving, the wings of a polite moth seeming to multiply in the candlelight. But soon something more interesting happened. His brain began to formulate thoughts of crystal clear precision with no effort. Georgie saw faces, many of them, in vivid detail, not impressionistic, but hyper realistic. A level of specificity his mind was usually not capable of. Every face from across his life seemed to appear from childhood to today, sort of one by one, but also there together all at once. He saw Aunt, Margot, Otto, Juliet, his nanny from when he was a toddler, his first memory wiggling on a shag carpet, seeing her bare ankles before she crouched and smiled. He could see birthmarks, eyelashes, acne scars. He progressed to the faces of his online connections. Avatars come to life, faces he had sometimes viewed for only a second on his phone. He saw these with clarity too. His mind was recording everything, it seemed, always. The faces entered the attic, celebrities too, passing strangers from the panhandle. Soon, every face he had ever observed seemed to be present in this attic with him, floating yet grounded, neither intimidating nor especially friendly. He also saw his father and mom. He thought about his family tree. Georgie was a descendant of the very first human on Earth, the earliest single celled organism, the inaugural goopy amoeba. His unborn child and grandchild would be their descendants too, even if they were never even born. Georgie saw faces of all the generations before and after him. He didn't know how this was possible since he couldn't see into the future and didn't know his ancestors, anyone beyond his grandparents, and not even all four of them. His father barely knew his father. Was that coincidence or predestined? Still, they were all connected. It was a matter of fact, Georgie could see now. It wasn't only people. Georgie had relationships to products, organizations, brands, and those had faces too. Logos and typefaces and primary colors. Google and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok would all be gone one day. Georgie understood this. The internet had barely been around decades. The most famous brands, Coca-Cola, Disney, only a century. The oldest restaurant in the world was a few centuries old. They served suckling pig, a drop of fat in the paella pan of human history. The camera was invented in 1816. All would become dust one day, which meant all would exist forever, too, like the microplastics in his gut. His timeline, profiles, reviews, photos, emotions, too, fear, joy, anxiety, those would live on. He was forever tied to these feelings, also to his old employer, Oates Technologies, and to Microsoft Office. Love, Humans were linked in these never-ending relationships, and the energy was constant. It fueled the ball of liquid iron at the center of the earth. You could never really be alone, Georgie saw. And yet, we were always that too, of course. The oneness of existence. Mindy was right. Georgie wanted to sit up and shout, but he realized his body couldn't do either. It was fine. Buddha meant awakened, and Mindy was his Buddha. His journey began and would end with Mindy. It was fate. Georgie smiled at the ceiling, his joints relaxed. Every being and thing in this universe was interconnected. Yes. What supreme peace there was in that. Unpacking this, Georgie already felt less insecure and competitive and distant and resentful and tempted to run away from it all. We were not imprisoned by the boundaries of our skin or of cities, countries, continents. Yes, the bumper stickers had it right. One love. The effect started to wear off. Soon, Georgie wondered if these thoughts counted as any level of ego death. He knew taking one stupid tab or pill or fungus couldn't erase decades of conditioning. But the oneness he felt was real and inspiring. Or had Mindy's preachings just choreographed it all? Like watching a scary movie before bed, then wondering why you had a nightmare. Was any epiphany in this universe really original? He concluded originality didn't matter, only purity, and this was pure. Georgie reverted back to observing the room. The constellations outside the window comforted him. Streaks and smudges filled the stratosphere, the oily fingerprints of God. He thought about Aunt. He could feel her sorrows, aspirations, laughs, frustrations. Georgie and Aunt would always be together, it was clear, even when they were not. He thought he fell asleep. When he looked at his watch next, it was 6 a.m. Again, time was unreliable. Georgie was excited to tell Mindy about his experiences and hear about hers as well. He smiled. And it was at this moment he heard it, a gurgling sound. Air and liquid in tango. Georgie shook his muscles awake and summoned enough coordination to sit up. Thank you. I think I'll end there.
Thank you so much for that amazing reading, Vincent. Let's give another virtual round of applause for Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Introducing our next reader, Rob Davidson is the author of 6 books, including Welcome Back to the World, a novella and stories published by Cornerstone Press. Davidson's fiction, essays, and interviews have appeared in Ziziva, Hayden's Ferry Review, Indiana Review, New Delta Review, South Dakota Review, and elsewhere. His honors include a Fulbright Award, multiple Pushcart Prize nominations, and an AWP Intro Journals Project Award in Fiction. Twice appointed artist in residence at the Woodstock Birdcliff Guild, Rob has led workshops at the Fairbanks Summer Art Festival, the Anderson Island Writing Retreat, the Reading Writers Forum, and other events. He teaches creative writing and American literature at California State University, Chico. Please, everybody, welcome Rob Davidson.
Thank you, Michael. Lovely to be here. Big thanks to Why There Are Words, Peg, Maggie, and Michael. Had the pleasure of reading in person in Sausalito a couple of times, which was great, and happy to be part of this next sort of iteration. So I'm going to read part of a longer story from the new book, Welcome Back to the World. This story is called Bushiban Blues, and a Bushiban is like a cram school. So the story is set in Taiwan, and the protagonist is an American named Will, who's been living in Taiwan for quite a while, teaching English in one of these cram schools. And he has a Taiwanese girlfriend, Mei Hua, and they've been a couple for a long time, running the school together. And Will is interested in getting married, but Mei Hua's been a little bit hesitant. So we're going to pick up sort of in the middle of the story. Will declared that it was time to speak to Mei Hua's parents. She warned him it would be a bad idea, but he insisted. They'd been a couple for 5 years. They were business partners and lovers. They lived together. They worked together. They had a right to plan a life together. And hadn't she just confirmed it for him? Mei Hua wanted to marry. She wanted kids. They wanted these things together. Why couldn't they work together to make it happen? They both knew the answer. Will suggested they run off to Hong Kong and elope. Her family would come around sooner or later. That would be worse than a slap in the face, Mei Hua said somberly. My parents might never speak to me again. Will said, what if you accidentally got pregnant? She cocked her head. I'm not playing games with my father. We need his blessing. Well, then we need to speak to him together, Will said. She covered her face with her hands. I can't, Will. I'm not ready. She would never be ready. He understood that now. Well, then I need to speak to him. I've got it all laid out in my mind. I'll bring the school ledgers. I'll bring our savings account statement. Doesn't he want to be a grandfather? Mei Hua resisted for weeks. Will was patient but persistent. He was ready to settle down. He felt it in his bones. If there was some sort of sticking point with her parents, he wanted to address it, not hide from it. He had a hunch, call it a certain confidence, that Chi Wei, the father, could be persuaded. He was a businessman, after all. They'd reached some sort of agreement. Mei Hua, openly frustrated at being pressured on two sides, finally relented. On a Sunday afternoon, she took Will to Beitun District to discuss the marriage. Will wore his best trousers and shirt, even a tie, felt like a job interview. Mei Hua led him up to a family altar on the second floor of the house, a room that Will had never seen. She kissed him, wished him good luck, and then quietly walked downstairs to await the verdict. He'd wanted to address the parents jointly, but Mei Hua assured him this would be a conversation between men only. Mei Hua's mother knelt before the altar, chanting softly, bowing and offering prayers. The Buddha, made of burnished bronze, sat in the lotus position, eyes lowered, hands folded in the cosmic mudra. A silky thin taper of smoke rose from one of the incense burners. Will knew the family was Buddhist, though Mei Hua was not an active practitioner. Will was not a person of faith. He never thought to even ask about any of it. Chi Wei sat stiffly upright in a chair. Will sat opposite him. Chi Wei asked questions in Mandarin. What were his intentions? How did he intend to make Mei Hua happy? Will spoke of their commitment and affection, the rare quality of true love, but the father cut him off. He began a long, circuitous discussion on security, stability, and permanence. Will was patient. Talking around a thing was often a feature of Chinese conversation. Finally, Chi Wei concluded his oration with one simple question. How will you support her? Money. Okay, he wanted to talk about money. Will was prepared for this. He began to recite the annual profits at Sunflower Academy, splendor but consistent. From his bag, he extracted printouts of his business ledgers, copies of his bank statements, all available for review. Being successful at business was good, Chi Wei said, but that wasn't what he wanted to know. A man cannot support a family without property. What do you own? You rent your school building. Are you going to buy a house, an apartment building in Taichung City? You don't even own a car. Will felt a spike of panic. He might be able to afford a car, but he couldn't afford to buy an apartment or a house, let alone buy a commercial property. Chi Wei knew that and was making it hard. Chi Wei lectured Will on the need for stability, for permanence. Where was his family? My mom lives in Tampa, Florida, Will said. My dad passed away 8 years ago. I have a brother in Fort Collins, Colorado. Do you speak with him? Once a year, Will said, looking away. We're not close. Why is that? Will resented the question. He felt it was none of Chi Wei's business, though clearly Chi Wei felt differently. Refusing to answer was not going to help. Will recited the sad story of the family breaking apart, the parents each taking one son. He said, I rarely saw my brother after that. Instead of growing closer, we grew apart. I guess we never fixed it. Not entirely. But it wasn't exactly our fault, at least initially. Our parents made that decision. Chi Wei seemed to consider the point. Does your mother work? Yes, she runs a print shop with her second husband. And do they own it? Well, they own the shop, but a franchise owns the parent company. Chi Wei asked, does your mother ever visit you in Taiwan? No, she's never been here. Do you visit her in Florida? I've been back twice. Twice in 10 years. Chi Wei folded his arms across his chest. You're alone here. You reject your family. You have little wealth, and you want to marry my daughter. Now, I don't reject, but Will paused, taking a deep breath. Things were sliding out from under him. He must not lose this moment. He sat forward in his chair. Lu Chi Wei, with respect, I love your daughter, and she loves me. Isn't that enough? Our business is doing very well. I have a robust savings account. In time, we will accomplish all the things you desire of us, but let us marry now. Let us give you a grandchild. Let us celebrate. Our love is pure. You think pure love is enough? Yes, Chi Wei. Chi Wei gave him a long, hard look. Marriage is about security. And then he stood and walked out of the room. For the rest of that week, Will and Mei Hua hardly spoke. A gloomy silence hung over them, dark and foreboding. The next weekend, she rode the bus out to Beitun District alone. She did not return for 3 days, missing work. When she did return, he fixed her supper and they spoke over the table. In a dry, almost businesslike tone, Mei Hua confirmed what Will suspected. Her parents did not approve of her marrying a white foreigner, at least one without property or money. Chi Wei considered Will a vagabond, a waif, not to be trusted. He forbade her from marrying him. They could continue to date, but at this point, Mei Hua felt that even that was disappointing her father's wishes. Don't say that, Will said. He doesn't want us to marry. I get it. They'd back off the issue. Will could afford to buy a car. Wei Ting, one of their family members, could help them find an apartment to purchase. Maybe in another 2 or 3 years, things might look different. They could try again. The main thing is we're together, you and me, he said. He reached his hand across the table and she placed hers in his. He gave it a squeeze, but she did not reciprocate. Hey, talk to me. Her eyes cast down to the table, Mei Hua shook her head slowly. Will's throat tightened. Don't do this. She brought the back of her hand to her mouth. I wish you hadn't spoken to him. Now things have been said, a line has been drawn. My father is firm. She sat back in her chair, withdrawing her hand. A few days later, she packed up her things and left the apartment, moving back into her parents' home. She stayed at Sunflower Academy for another 3 weeks. It was horribly awkward and strange. She avoided talking to Will, avoided eye contact and chat. She wanted to pretend that their relationship had never happened. He told her it didn't have to be like that. They could still be friends, but they couldn't be lovers. They couldn't be friends. And in the end, they couldn't even work quietly side by side. And then she was gone, absent, vanished. He knew he would never see her again, never hear from her. Privately, he cursed her father and his old-fashioned ideas, but mostly he cursed himself for not listening to Mei Hua in the first place. She had counseled him to lay low, to be quiet and patient right from day one. She knew how to play it. He'd pressured her, forced the question, and he'd gotten the answer that he deserved. His Taiwanese friends listened to the story in a respectful silence. Nothing about it shocked them. Lu Chi Wei might be old school and conservative, but he was hardly alone. His expat friends told him, shake it off. There's any number of Asian women in Taiwan. They like to date white guys. Plenty of other fish in the sea. He'll find another woman, and Mei Hua will fade from memory. But it wasn't like that. Will was heartbroken, yes, but also stunned and humiliated. The whole experience made him question to what degree he had come to rely consciously or unconsciously on white privilege. Did he really think that he could move to Asia and everyone was going to bow to his demands? Who was he? Why was he so shocked? He lived in a culture he only partially understood at best. speaking a language he struggled to master, ignorant of a deeper set of values, beliefs, and customs. Should it really come as a surprise to him to learn that, lo and behold, he was not welcomed by every Taiwanese family he met? There were some who viewed him with doubt and suspicion, who regarded him as an outsider and unwelcome guest. And there was one man in Beitun district who, when asked, said no. No to this white man. No to this daughter seeking his approval to marry a Lauai, a white foreigner. No, no, no. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that amazing reading. Please give a round of virtual applause to Rob, and thank you again so much. Our next reader is Soma Mei Sheng Fraser, whose debut novel, Off the Books, earned positive reviews from the New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Bustle, Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and others, and was included in Bustle's Most Anticipated Roundup. Her essays and interviews are featured in People Magazine, Electric Literature, and Literary Hub. You can also find her writing in 3 prose chapbooks, as well as Ziziva, Glimmer Train, the Mississippi Review, and elsewhere. Soma teaches creative writing and digital storytelling at SUNY Oswego. Please, everyone, welcome Soma Mei Sheng Fraser.
Man, I wish it were sunny in Oswego. It is not. It is not. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here with all y'all and in this great lineup. Thank you, Peg, Maggie, Michael, and Cass. You're still, you're part of the crew. All right, so I'm gonna warm up my mic with a poem and then read a little bit of my novel. The poem is called Budapest. I take my future husband to the lesbian party. Well, that's what he calls it afterward. To me, it is only a party where we awkwardly bump into my ex. I'm not yet sure where he stands on queerness, my future husband, whether I can meet him at that place, only sure that his mother dragged him for years to a Black Baptist church. Well, that's what he calls it. To her, it is comfort, collectivism, a string phone to the treehouse where somebody we can't see picks up his tin can and listens as she cries into hers. The next day, I meet my future mother-in-law, and at one point she leans close to whisper, "What are you? I mean, what's your affiliation?" I think of the lesbian party. Well, I say, my dad was raised Baptist, and my mom came up Buddhist, so I guess I'm Budapest. I've never been great at puns, but I'm a good mom now to her grandkid, who's trans and non-binary, and sometimes I catch my mother-in-law staring, squinting, as though trying to recall where Budapest is on the map. All right, fiction. So just to contextualize this excerpt a little bit, I'm gonna read Macmillan's synopsis because they can synopsize better than I can. So the novel is about recent Dartmouth dropout May. In search of a new direction in life, she drives a limo to make ends meet. Her grandfather convinces her to take on private clients who pay under the table, and before she knows it, she is working as a trusted chauffeur for sex workers. May does her best to mind her own business, but her knack for discretion soon leads her on a life-changing trip from San Francisco to Syracuse with a new client. Handsome and reserved, Henry piques May's interest. Toting an enormous black suitcase with him everywhere he goes, he's more concerned with taking frequent breaks than making good time on the road. When May discovers Henry's secret, she does away with her usual close-lipped demeanor and decides she has no choice but to confront him. What he reveals rocks her to her core and shifts this once casual transactional road trip to one of moral stakes and dangerous consequences. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so a little bit of further context. They're in the car, headed from San Francisco to Syracuse, kind of chatting through that partition window. She driving, he in the back seat with his enormous, mysterious suitcase. And the handouts that I'll refer to are the one-pagers that she types up describing for her clients each stop they will make. No matter how many times she drives through Wyoming, its emptiness still catches her by surprise. Henry raps twice on the partition and she opens the little window. The faint twinge of vomit underneath Big Sur Bree's air freshener makes her thankful for Lauyer's foresight in installing such a sturdy, airtight divider. If there's one thing her family knows, it's how to fit things together from railroad ties to Tetris tiles, but then they also know how to break things apart. What are those weird fences? She takes in the slatted beams. Snow fences, she says, as though she possesses an innate understanding of Wyoming's mysteries, as though this were not something her fact sheet research turned up last month when she'd driven a man she suspected of being a retired triad cross-country to see his grandkids. They really cut down on winter accidents. But like, there's so many gaps. How do they catch the flakes? They don't. They just slow the wind down till it lets go of them. Huh. Otherwise, the gusts of snow make it impossible to see. She meets his eyes in the rear view. The fences also cut down on plowing, sanding, salting. Go figure, he says. With the partition window open, the sickly sweet Big Sur breeze makes her gag. She cracks her own window. Let's get it cleaned professionally, she'd suggested back in Elko, but he'd flat out refused. It's fine, he said. Let's not waste the money, tapping his exorbitant Bulgari, or time. His erratic juxtaposing of frugality and finery reminded her of how before her father left them last year, Mama had paired the mink coat he'd bought her with cheap department store jeans. Spend, don't spend, hurry, don't hurry. He was a paradox. In the back seat, Henry arranges and rearranges his long legs, still winds up looking cramped. You're a fount of knowledge, May L. Brown. Ugh. Not my full name, please. Why not? It's on your highly informative handouts. It's the worst of cultural combos. What do you mean? She exhales sharply. My mom wanted the character I for love somewhere in my name. She had all these pretty combinations of Chinese words picked out, but she didn't want it to just be I, and my dad thought a longer name would be hard for Americans, so they settled on May. What's wrong with May? I like it. I mean, sure, it's fine alone, but my mom was insistent about the love thing, so the L stands for love. Love. It's cute. May Love Brown. It's like I'm stating my favorite color. He clears his throat. Want to know my middle name? Sure. Rocky. Rocky? Yeah, like after China's sacred mountains. Adrian! See? I snort. I'm trying to empathize, and this is how you do me? In the rear view, a lazy half smile. How long before we make it to Nevada? Nebraska? Yeah, that. She glances at the clock. It's 4 p.m., meaning they've been on the road for 3 hours. 3 more hours, she says, if we don't make too many stops. But as always, he requests multiple stops, each time grabbing his cooler from the trunk, dragging his heavy suitcase from the back seat, and lugging it out of sight to do whatever it is he does. At a gas station, she purchases an enormous icy, blue on the bottom, red on top. He only purchases ice to refresh his cooler, and by the time he returns, she's down to purple sludge. And further down the road, at a truck stop, she grows so bored with spinning an enormous rack of plastic vanity plate keychains, Martin, Melissa, Melvin, even Myrna, but of course no May, that she purchases one for Henry. When she hands it to him outside the car, his face does something so odd that she wonders how many women have given him gifts, whether perhaps he only associates with the kind who stay on the receiving end. His car doors open, the heavy suitcase nestled inside waiting. He fingers the trinket. Thanks, he says slowly. She wonders what his Chinese name is, if he has one. His phone rings, and he pulls it from his jeans pocket. Reading the caller's name, he stiffens. I have to take this, he says tersely. She shrugs. Go on, she urges when he lingers. He glances from the suitcase to May to his phone. Just close the car door, he says. Be right back. And then he's off through the lot, sprinting toward the highway, as though to sprout wheels and make the rest of the drive on his own. She takes in his easy athleticism, the multicolored limited edition dunks. He's ditched the suit entirely now, and the button-downs too, reminding her of the way her favorite professor dressed and spoke formally at the start of each new term, and by the end wore jeans, coffee stains, and smirks. The threadbare gray t-shirt clings to the sculpted musculature of Henry's shoulders, his back. She has to force herself to look away by leaning into the sedan's open door across the back seat to press her palms against the black suitcase and shove it a bit further in. And that's when the first thing happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that amazing reading, Soma. Please give a round of applause to Soma Meisheng Fraser, and thank you again so much. For our final reader of the night, please welcome Nina Schuyler, whose short story collection, In This Ravishing World, won the W.S. Porter Prize for Short Story Collections and the Prism Prize for Climate Literature, and was published in July 2024. Her novel, Afterword, won the Forward Indies Book of the Year Award for Science Fiction and Literary and the Pencraft Seasonal Book Award for Literary and Science Fiction. Her novel, The Translator, was shortlisted for the William Saroyan International Prize for Writing and won the Next Generation Indie Book Award for General Fiction. Her short stories have been published by Ziziva, Chicago Quarterly Review, Fugue, Glimmer Train, Nashville Review, Your Impossible Voice, and elsewhere, and have been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. She teaches creative writing for Stanford Continuing Studies and the Writing Salon. Everyone, please welcome Nina Schuyler.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peg and Michael and everyone for showing up. But this is like the best way to spend a rainy night if you're in the Bay Area. So I can't think of a better way to just sit back and listen to stories. I'm going to read from In This Ravishing World. It's sort of a short story collection, sort of a novel. It's intertwining short stories that kind of, there's a character that roams around, the same character. I brought together dreamers, activists, escapists, and artists, and also the voice of nature, all kind of spiraling and circling around climate change. I'm going to open. I have the first person omniscient voice of nature. I gave nature a voice. The human ear can hear a sound wave as low as 20 hertz, the lowest pedal on a pipe organ, or pick up a pitch as high as 20,000 hertz, a soprano singer C7. This might be the problem. I don't speak in your range. If I say the world can give you more than it should, do you hear me? Or the air will become so sluggish, so hot and heavy, clogged with pollution, eyes watering, burning, a constant cough, constant sickness, malaria, dengue, cholera? Or the sunlight filters through a green oak leaf on a hot June day, revealing an inner map of light green veins that lead to another green, one that speaks to something deep inside, something that only green soothes. Or in the West, the land is so dry, the cracks scribbled in dirt spell the word desperation. Or ask, what do you care about? Or you will miss everything, always, painfully. Or what do you owe an egret, a jaguar? Do any of these words spring up in flame? Maybe I need to say something comforting so you relax, and the words slip in like beautiful music. I've heard humans can't stare directly at it. It's like looking at the sun. How about, once upon a time, a man and a woman had a child. They lived in a little house with a stone fireplace and a yard filled with Queen Anne's lace. Then one day, something terrible happened. I've been trying to speak to you for years, and despite wildfires, droughts, and floods, I haven't gotten through. I know it's enormous and terrifying, and I wish I could think about dirt and new leaves sprouting, horses galloping in open fields, and spider webs woven in a rickety fence. Such fragility and all this wonder. For you, there are infinite ways to fill your ears with melody and money, loneliness and love and envy. Stories, so many stories. You stuff your ears with romance, affairs, falsehoods, jokes, trivia, and the mysterious struggles between humans. Amazing what the human ear attends to, and what the ear is flush with swims like through the brain like a fish, or so I imagine. The other day I heard someone say nature will have the last laugh, but I don't want it. We're enmeshed, we always have been, tightly knitted together, whether you like it or not. Our lots are cast together, and as things have become more urgent, we've become more entangled. Fine threads connecting us, billions of them. I'm not sure what to do because the alarm bell is ringing. Do you hear it? I know the sound waves are in your frequency. So now I'm going to turn to a short story in the collection. It's called The Object of Dancing. And a ballet troupe has received funding to combine kind of ecology and art to try to bring attention to nature and ecology. It's true that Ed inhabits his own world, but right now he's trying to leave that world and enter another. He takes a delicate sip from his water bottle and crosses his thin, elegant legs like an aristocrat. He stretches his hamstring on the bar and watches Henry. The fog casts a strange light, and Henry's blonde hair looks illuminated. Ed's always loved his legs until he met Henry, who has legs that reach up to his armpits, and his quads bulge in the most beautiful, sculpted way, like they are now, and he lifts one female dancer after another high into the air. Henry's legs are chiseled to perfection, like a Rodin sculpture. Colleen claps her hands. Okay, Ed and Henry, Colleen is directing this performance, and that's what he should be thinking about, how much he wants the performance to succeed, how much it matters to him. He is putting his heart and soul and body and every molecule of himself into this because, for the first time, it makes sense. Him, dance, the dance itself, a lead role. And it doesn't require long legs or leaps or tossing lithe, nearly vaporous females into the air. He is to become something other, something outside of human. What is required is movement, but also the mind of an artist that knows how to get out of the way, to step outside the tragically limited confines of human and become other. Henry is to become a cat, and Ed, a rat. Henry gracefully slips down on all fours, moving silently, as if traveling through liquid air, with feet and hands now padded paws, and he is a mere 8 pounds. He's wearing his costume. Yesterday, Henry showed up with a stretch of black fur stitched like a tube around his midsection. Colleen objected. I want you to inhabit the cat before you get to props. Props are a crutch. But Henry was the lead dancer in La Sylphie. Henry, petulant Henry, pouted and whined and sulked. He needed the costume, he told her. It would help him. You'll see, watch. Henry caved, or Colleen caved, a hard, clean line drawn from Henry to the world that he wanted. Ed felt a collusion of envy and admiration for the man who gets what he wants, who can so easily become a cat. Henry is more cat-like than he was 2 days ago, almost outside the avoir that is human. Not quite cat, but closer. And Colleen, Ed can tell by the way she's watching Henry with a warm smile, is delighted. Henry and his allure like a seductive perfume, smoothly moving across the floor, the sensuous shape of his back. Ed gets down on all fours, his belly low to the ground. It's not a secret he's fallen out of Colleen's favor. For 2 weeks now, Ed has not performed well. He keeps thinking he is a man acting like a rat, which is the problem. He needs to eliminate the word man from his thought and leapfrog straight to rat, to shed the human body and mind, to step out of it, beyond it, and experience the world in a radically different way. But how? Ed lowers his head to the ground. He's never been so aware of the dirt and dust, the scuff marks and scratches on the wood floor. The floor has a history. The floor has a lived experience. All the ballet shoes, the sweat, bodies, dreams, and desires. If a rat has a consciousness, does the floor have one too? What about the piano? Henry is across the room, eyeing him. God, Henry is so beautiful. His shock of blonde hair, flushed cheeks, full pink lips, and eyes startlingly china blue. Eyes that change color. The other day, Ed could have sworn they were cornflower blue. Okay, stop, said Colleen. Ed, what's happening, Ed? Ed sits down. You've lost it again. Where's your focus, says Colleen, frowning, her tweezed eyebrows inching together. Henry stands and audibly sighs. He heads to the ballet bar and stretches his calves. There's a cat in the room, said Colleen. Life and death, survival. You should be feeling tension, living the tension. Ed nods, watching Henry practice his grand pliés. The right tension, says Colleen. Colleen, let's try it again. Henry doesn't wait. He's on the ground. And as soon as Ed is down on all fours again, Henry leisurely circles the room. Ed practiced for hours in his tiny apartment, but there were rugs and lamps and human voices leaking through the walls, and he was too aware of a human pretending to be a rat. He's here now, he tells himself, and Henry, the embodiment of a cat, but those long legs of his. Does he love Henry? Ed expects Colleen to stop him again, but she doesn't. And Henry circles, eyeing Ed, and Ed begins to feel actual fear. His jaws ache. He hunts for a place to hide. But when Henry licks his lips, Ed imagines that tongue on his chest, his shoulder. Okay, says Colleen, enough, take a break. Henry stands, turns his head left and right, picks up his water bottle and sips. Every movement seems to swell with awareness, as if Henry has found an opportunity to create art through the act of living. What Henry does, I will do, thinks Ed. Ed moves his head the same way and imagines the air has substance, and he must proceed with intention to shape it into a beautiful space. Okay, Ed, remember, the cat is hungry. The cat presents danger, says Colleen, her tone stern. Henry's eyes are closed as if he's nestling deep in the body of a cat, and he will not be found, not by a human who is looking at him, lusting after him, not by anything. Ed tries to not think of Henry as Henry, but as a hungry cat. But he has lusted for Henry for 5 months, ever since Henry moved from New York and joined the San Francisco Ballet. Henry, born in Russia, or so Ed heard, trained at the Kerval Ballet. Tired of the competition and the cruelty in New York, Henry told Ed that he was looking for camaraderie, for friends. New York wants to grind you down. New York burns through dancers at a frenetic pace because there's a whole goddamn line of them waiting in the wings to replace you. I'm not giving up, he told Ed. I'm trying to find a different way. No more one-night stands with fellow ballet dancers and the destructive jealousy and all that comes with it. He didn't want to get involved sexually with anyone here. All his energy would go into work. I have grand ambitions, and I'm not going to blow it this time. Henry wants no regrets when he looks back at his life. But that was 5 months ago, and surely emotions shift. Surely the body, Henry's strong, lovely body and heart grow lonely. The music has started again. Old Mrs. Miles at the piano. Become the rat, for Christ's sake. Be the rat. They're waiting. Henry is in the corner, dozing, like a cat stretched out on his side, his arms and legs in front of him, his right here on the ground, but both eyes are open, tracking Ed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that amazing reading, Nina. Please give another round of virtual applause to Nina Schuyler. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you.
So to wrap us up, thank you to all our incredible authors for sharing your work and your words tonight. It's such a pleasure. Like Nina said, best way to spend a lovely fall evening. And thank you to WTAW for continuing to create these spaces for readers and authors alike. And thank you to Maggie Whitehead, who is also an amazing writer, for all your great work on our social media and for co-emceeing via the Zoom chat. And thank you again to Peg. And thank you to all of you who are joining us tonight. Thank you for being here, the audience. And be sure to check out the author's books. Everyone's links are in the chat, so make sure to save those as you reflect on all these great writing and readings. And thank you again for everyone for being here and for your support. Should be a link in the chat too to further support us as well. So thank you for considering that. And let's give one more round of virtual applause and snaps for all our amazing readers. And so as we depart, please consider supporting WTAW's work and stay well and read well and be good to one another, especially in these crazy times. All we have is each other and our communities. And so we're here for each other. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.